In the northern foothills of the Appalachians, on the border between West Virginia and Kentucky, there is a place not marked on any modern map. Locals call it Black Gorge. According to legend, at the end of the 19th century, only two roads led there: an old forest trail long swallowed by fallen trees, and a wooden bridge spanning a narrow canyon, where black streams of water poured down from the mountains. The bridge had long rotted, its planks fallen into the abyss, yet the elders still warned. If you hear a woman's voice in the mountains, call back, do not respond, and never cross the bridge to Black Gorge. In the Mason County archives, there is mention of a small settlement that disappeared from maps in the early 20th century. According to surviving records, it was founded in 1868 by the Blackthorn family, 4 brothers and their younger sister. Their origins are shrouded in mystery. Church records list only their names. Eli, the eldest, silent, with a black beard. Matthew, tall, with sharply defined cheekbones. Jonathan, with brown eyes that, according to neighbors, looked right through you. Amos, the youngest, but with a face aged by mountain life. And their sister Rebecca, about whom the least is known, except that she was never seen in town. They kept to themselves. They did not participate in fairs, did not trade at markets, and even attended church in the neighboring town only on major holidays. Always together, standing in the back row. Yet once a year, one of the brothers would appear in the county and would return not alone. From 1871, local newspapers began publishing engagement announcements. At first, this did not seem unusual. Marriages between residents of neighboring counties were common. But the Blackthorns had a peculiarity. Every bride was from outside the area. Women came from other states, Ohio, Pennsylvania, even distant Missouri. They were all young, often from poor families, and almost always orphans or women who had lost their parents in recent years. Some were widows left without means. Each marriage was announced in town, but the ceremonies took place in Black Gorge, behind closed doors. No outside witnesses were invited. A week or two later, the groom would return to town on business, but the bride was never seen with him again. When asked, people said she was tired from the journey, ill, or needed rest. After a few months, letters from these women ceased arriving to their families. Perhaps the first to openly speak of the strange events was Margaret Henley, the innkeeper in Harper's Falls, a town 20 miles from the gorge. She recalled in her diary, discovered 100 years later. In 1873, a girl named Elizabeth Morrow stayed in my room. Beautiful, fair-haired, with kind eyes. She said she was going to her fiancé in Black Gorge. In the morning, a tall man in a dark cloak came for her. She smiled, but her eyes were red from crying. I asked if everything was all right, and she quietly answered, "It must be so." I never saw her again. That same year, the county archives recorded the death by fever of a 19-year-old woman, wife of Eli Blackthorn. But the document was strange. The place of death field was blank, and the doctor's signature looked illegible, as if rushed. Black Gorge was located above a network of old coal and iron mines abandoned before the Civil War. According to a county historian, access was only through 2 entrances, one from the village, the other via a steep descent near the Blackwater River. The water in the river was dark, almost black due to minerals, and remained icy even in summer. Locals avoided it, saying that the water held echoes, and one could hear foreign whispers if standing on the bank at night. It was believed that the Blackthorns used the mines as storage and workspaces for extracting rare or purchased by middlemen from Pittsburgh. But some witnesses claimed that voices could be heard from the tunnels at night. Pastor Joseph Crane of Harper's Falls left a series of letters in the church archives, dated 1874 to 1878. I tried to persuade the Blackthorn brothers to hold at least one wedding in our church. They cited tradition, that a marriage must take place in the groom's home. But I never saw any of their wives after the wedding day. Sometimes I heard women crying when passing the gorge, but when I approached the bridge, I saw only closed shutters and shadows in the windows. These letters drew no attention until the late 20th century, when the county began studying the history of the missing women. In 1881, The disappearance of a bride first caused a stir outside the county. A young teacher from Ohio, Sarah Winslow, wrote to her sister that she was marrying a mysterious but kind man from Virginia. Letters arrived weekly as she traveled across several states. The last letter was dated the day she arrived in Harper's Falls. After that, silence. Her family raised the alarm and hired a private detective from Charleston. He reached Harper's Falls but returned 3 days later, abandoning the case. Rumor has it he was seen speaking with Eli Blackthorn by the bridge before leaving in complete silence. In 1884, a farmer named Thomas Greaves reported to the sheriff's office that he saw a boat moving at night along the river without a lantern. There were 2 men and a woman in a white dress. According to him, the woman did not move. The sheriff recorded his account, but no investigation followed. A brief note remains in the archives. No crime committed. The boat may have been heading to a nearby settlement. After the incident with the boat, the Blackwater River began appearing in more and more rumors. Locals started noticing that on moonless nights, boats without lanterns, covered in dark tarps, would move along the current. The sound of the oars was muffled, and at the stern there was always a person wearing a long coat and a hat with a wide brim pulled down. In July 1885, a young woman named Catherine Brown, an orphan from Baltimore, arrived in Harper's Falls. She stayed at the same inn where Elizabeth Morrow had stayed 10 years earlier. 2 days later, she was seen in a shop buying a white ribbon and tea. That evening, a man identified as Jonathan Blackthorn came for her. The next morning, Catherine had vanished. The innkeeper, Margaret Henley, wrote in her diary. She looked worried. She asked how far it was to the river and if there was a bridge. When I told her that the bridge was the only road to Black Gorge, she turned pale and didn't speak another word. A month later, the county newspaper published a brief notice about the death of a young woman, wife of Jonathan Blackthorn, from sudden fever. No photo or funeral date was given. In 1890, a carpenter from Harper's Falls, George Miller, was repairing the barn of an old house bought by a widow. While dismantling a wall, he discovered a bundle of rags containing 3 letters. The paper was yellowed, the ink faded, but the text was legible. The letters were written in different handwriting, but all began the same way. If you have found this letter, it means I am still in the gorge. Please, do not believe them. I am not sick. They are keeping me underground. One letter was signed Sarah Winslow. The others were signed simply with names, Catherine and Margaret. Miller showed the discovery to the sheriff. He took the letters for verification of authenticity, and no one ever saw them again. A week later, the house where the wall had been found burned to the ground under unexplained circumstances. By the early 1890s, rumors about the Blackthorns had spread throughout the county. People said that at night one could hear the sound of pickaxes from the gorge, even though the mines were officially closed. Others swore they saw the glow of torches moving along the mountainside. Old blacksmith Joseph Farrell told his grandchildren, "One night I was walking home and heard someone quietly singing in a woman's voice. The song was sad, and the words were incomprehensible. I got closer and saw that the sound came directly from the ground, from an old mine collapse. I ran as fast as I could." In 1893, several families moved from Harper's Falls to neighboring counties, claiming they didn't want their daughters to end up on the list of the missing. In 1896, a local shepherd reported seeing a wagon travel through the gorge at night, followed by 4 people carrying lanterns. In the morning, the earth at that spot had been freshly dug, with wilted wildflowers lying nearby. Pastor Crane wrote in his last letter to the church council, "I am certain I saw the Blackthorns bury someone in the woods, but they filled the grave so thoroughly that after a day it was impossible to find anything. The sheriff said it was probably dead livestock, but I know livestock aren't buried in dresses." In 1898, an event occurred that temporarily interrupted the family's tradition. Rebecca Blackthorn, the only woman in the house, disappeared. She was last seen on the porch holding a letter. The next day, the brothers claimed she had gone to visit relatives. However, rumors said Rebecca had tried to help one of the brides escape the gorge and was caught. After her disappearance, there were no weddings for nearly 3 years. In 1901, the youngest brother, Amos, brought a new wife to the gorge, a girl named Hannah Grayson from a small town in Pennsylvania. Her train arrived at night, and the only witnesses were two porters at the station. They later claimed she kept looking toward the road, as if searching for something. A week later, Amos said Hannah had caught a chill and was confined to bed. No outsiders ever saw her. 6 months later, he claimed she had died. Around the same time, a farmer whose fields bordered the river swore he saw a body in a white dress carried out of the gorge at night and loaded onto a boat. Between 1890 and 1900, according to various indirect accounts, at least 10 women entered Black Gorge, never to be heard from again. County archives preserved marriage records, but no death certificates, except for two suspicious entries made by the same doctor, who soon left the county. One of the few surviving witnesses, a 14-year-old boy named Lee Matthews, recounted in 1903 that he and friends sneaked into the gorge to steal chickens from the Blackthorns. According to him, they found a door in the barn leading to a tunnel that descended downward, where a faint lamplight glowed. The boys heard women's voices and the clinking of chains. Lee ran away, and a month later his family left town. Officially, it was because of the mother's illness. Unofficially, someone had been knocking on their windows at night, leaving pieces of or on the doorstep. By 1908, only the eldest brother, Eli, and Jonathan remained in the county. Matthew had died in a mine accident, Amos drowned in the river, and Rebecca's fate remained a mystery. But it was during these years that rumors about the Blackthorn family began to attract journalists' attention. In 1910, a correspondent from New York, Ralph Milton, arrived in Harper's Falls to investigate the legend of the disappearing brides. A week later he left, claiming that he had found nothing unusual. Yet in his personal notes, discovered after his death, there was a line. "There are mines there. And what's in them? It's better not to see." Spring of 1912 brought a strange calm. Harper's Falls and Mason County had long grown accustomed to the rumors about Black Gorge. For years, locals had feared approaching the forest paths leading to the old bridge, but never imagined that the story of the Blackthorns could end so abruptly. In April, Eli and Jonathan, the last remaining brothers, disappeared. At first, it seemed like a typical seclusion. Eli went to the Blackwater River, so the neighbors said, to sort out the mines, while Jonathan took a small bundle with him and returned only 2 days later, as if he had never left the gorge. No one saw them together in the village. On the third day, a neighbor, Merchant Thomas Wilkes, noticed smoke coming from the Blackthorn family's old house. But as he approached, the smoke vanished, as if no fire had ever been lit. The doors were locked, and inside there was complete silence. Neither brother ever appeared again. A week later, a few farmers dared to approach the house. On the porch, they found only old letters laid out on the table, signed by both brothers. The letters contained strange content, requests not to search for them, promises that everything that must remain hidden will stay in the earth, and references to a new beginning beneath the mountain. Longtime residents said the last time they saw the brothers was on the night of April 14th. They were walking along the path to the bridge, which had long since rotted away and disappeared into the mist descending into the gorge. No one heard boats or the sounds of merry laughter or crying, only the occasional glimmer of lamps and the dull thump of pickaxes from underground. From that day, the village was finally deserted. Without the Blackthorns, life in Black Gorge gradually vanished. Houses were overgrown with shrubs, roads were layered with fallen leaves, and the mines were filled with collapses and debris. Neighbors avoided the area, and rumors of strange female voices, weeping, and shadows only intensified. After Eli and Jonathan's disappearance, the village became a ghost town. The small school where children once studied stood empty, its doors creaking in the wind. Old shops and barns slowly fell apart, and on the bridge across the canyon, if anyone approached at summer dusk, scraps of white fabric could sometimes be seen, as if someone had recently passed by. Locals said that even forest animals stayed away from the gorge in those years. Dogs refused to enter the village, cats hid in corners, and birds left the trees, as if sensing something alien. By the early 1920s, Black Gorge had disappeared from maps and official records. Only indirect mentions of the Blackthorn family and the strangely vanished women remained in the archives. Yet legends continued to circulate orally, like a warning. Do not seek the path there if you value your life. 70 years passed. In 1983, a group of researchers and history enthusiasts received permission to explore an old Blackthorn mine. Descending through a narrow, partially collapsed tunnel, they came upon underground chambers previously thought to be mere collapses or natural shafts. In the chambers, they found bundles neatly wrapped in oilcloth. Inside were letters, diaries, and documents. Some letters were signed by women whose names appeared in archival marriage records: Sarah Winslow, Catherine Brown, Elizabeth Morrow, Margaret Henley, and others. The letters described terrible conditions. Women were kept in underground rooms, often alone, forbidden to go outside, and some complained of chains and the absence of light. Some pages were written in blood, or, according to researchers, in a substance very similar to the dark, resinous, or extracted from the mines. But the most disturbing discoveries lay ahead. Beneath layers of earth and stone, human remains were uncovered. Skeletons were partially burned or bricked into walls. Among them were a little girl and several women aged 18 to 25. Archaeologists dated the remains to the late 19th to early 20th centuries. After the 1980s mine discovery, new rumors began to circulate. Some researchers claimed that the Blackthorns had practiced a peculiar cult, worshipping a rare or mine beneath the village. According to the records found, the ore was considered alive, a source of power that prolonged the family's life and allowed control over the minds of those who entered the gorge. Witnesses reported that the underground chambers were decorated with ore, carefully collected and polished by the Blackthorns. Some letters mentioned rituals and ceremonies conducted by torchlight, during which women were to purify themselves and the spirit of the ore, while men observed to ensure that the energy remained within the family. Historians studying the materials noted that the cult likely involved elements of hypnosis and psychological pressure. Women became dependent on the family, lost touch with the outside world, and effectively disappeared entirely. The first person to publicly speak about the cult was archaeologist Thomas Harding in 1985. In an interview, he said, "What we found cannot be explained by mere economic activity. These are rituals, symbols, letters. Everything indicates that the family worshipped not just the ore, but the power it embodied. And perhaps this explains why women disappeared. They became part of this cult." After Harding's publication, interest in Black Gorge surged. However, researchers warned that the mines were unstable, access to the underground passages was dangerous, and local residents continued to avoid the area. By 1988, a group of local archaeologists returned to the mines. Among the ruins, they found stone altars decorated with ore and strange symbols resembling ancient scripts. On the walls were inscriptions: "The path through the ore leads to eternity, and power remains with those loyal to the underground." Some letters contained instructions for the continued use of the mines after the family's disappearance. New generations were to keep the secret, not reveal the power of the ore, and keep outsiders away. Witnesses who happened to pass by the mines at night reported hearing women's voices, resembling crying and whispering, and sometimes seeing a faint light moving underground. In one case, a farmer named William Turner claimed he saw a boat on the Blackwater River with a figure in a white dress heading deeper into the gorge. These testimonies only strengthened the legend. Black Gorge became a place of fear and mystery once again, nearly a century after the last of the Blackthorns vanished. The story of Black Gorge and the Blackthorn family remains unsolved. The letters found in the mines show that the ore cult was not merely a myth, but part of a reality connected to the disappearance of dozens of women. However, most materials remain hidden or lost, and the witnesses of past events have passed away. Legends of Black Gorge continue to live on. Locals say that if you walk along the trail leading to the bridge on a moonless night, you can hear women's voices, the sound of pickaxes, and even see flickers of lamps below. in the old mines. Some are convinced the ore is still alive, and it keeps the Blackthorn family's secret. Thus, Black Gorge remains etched in the county's memory as a place where history and myth intertwine forever, and the shadows of the past guard their secrets. In the summer of 1987, a team of researchers led by Professor Mark Lawson of Historical and Geological Sciences gained access to the deep tunnels of Black Gorge. Their main goal was to find the main chamber of the Blackthorns mentioned in old diaries. After several days of descent and measurements, the team came across a massive oak door reinforced with iron and covered with strange symbols. The door led to a huge chamber, the walls of which were entirely lined with rare red and black ore. Inside the chamber, the researchers found remains of wooden beds and tools, reminiscent of primitive rituals, charred and blood-stained inscriptions echoing motifs from 19th century diaries, skeletons of women carefully placed in niches and surrounded by ore, vessels with remnants of an unknown liquid, in which experts later found traces of metals occurring only in the ore itself. The strangest discovery was the central altar, carved from a single piece of ore, with recesses for ritual objects. Symbols resembling alchemical signs and astrological constellations, possibly a map of the Blackthorn ritual cycle, were etched on the walls. By comparing diaries, women's letters, and the artifacts found, historians made a shocking discovery. Women were used as intermediaries between the ore and the Blackthorns. They were bound in the chambers to amplify the ore's properties through fear and suffering. The rituals took place at night. The walls bore marks of moon phases and star charts. Each phase corresponded to a specific action or preparation, spells, infusion of women's energy. Music and sound. Diaries mentioned that women sang or moaned during rituals, enhancing the power of the ore. This may explain the legends of ghostly female voices in the gorge. The concluding ritual. After months of preparation, the ritual ended with the immersion of a woman into a special chamber with ore. It is believed this was not merely murder but an attempt to preserve the soul within the ore. After 1987, the chamber was sealed, and further research continued cautiously. Professor Lawson and his colleagues noted strange phenomena. Temperature and humidity fluctuated sharply without external cause. Lamps went out, and instruments showed anomalous magnetic fields. Sounds resembling women's cries repeated even in an empty chamber. Locals warned the researchers. The ore remembers people. Disturb it, and since then, Black Gorge became not only a historical site, but a place where the legend of the Blackthorns and the missing brides intertwined with unexplained phenomena. The village of Harper's Falls remained abandoned. The mystery of the ore and vanished women became part of archives and rare publications. Legends of shadows and female voices coming from the gorge continued in local memory. The ore cult of the Blackthorns remains one of America's most enigmatic and dark secrets. After decades of silence and neglect, Black Gorge drew the attention of paranormal researchers again. A team from the USA and Europe, equipped with modern devices, thermal cameras, magnetic sensors, and drones, aimed to document all anomalies. From the first hours, it became clear the gorge was alive. Drones captured brief flashes of light inside tunnels, as if emanating from the ore itself. Cameras recorded shadows not corresponding to any living being. Sensors recorded sound waves at frequencies matching women's voices from 19th century diaries. Modern attempts at interaction. Researchers tried various methods. 1. Testing the ore for radioactivity and metallurgical properties. The ore was unique. It contained elements not found in any known mineral on Earth. 2. Attempting to record the voices. Playback in the cave amplified the sounds, and the surrounding temperature dropped 5 to 7 degrees Celsius. 3. Magnetic experiments. Metallic instruments began moving on their own, as if drawn to an invisible force within the ore. 4. Experiments with live volunteers. Several participants experienced headaches, a sense of being watched, and one claimed to see a female silhouette emerging from the walls. Past mysteries meet the present. Modern scientists concluded that the Blackthorns' 19th century rituals were not accidental. Possibly, the energy of women subjected to fear and suffering was somehow sealed in the ore. Locals now call the gorge not just black, but alive, warning tourists. The ore remembers everyone who comes here out of curiosity. Consequences. The gorge is partially open to researchers, but officially closed to mass tourism. 19th century diaries and 1987 reports are preserved in universities in the USA and Canada. Local legends have intensified. Disappearances of tourists, rumors of ghostly female voices, and mysterious lights in the gorge. Modern experts warn. The power contained in the ore can be dangerous. It does not forgive curiosity. Black Gorge is not merely a site of old crimes or rituals. It is a space where the past, pain, and unknown forces intertwine with the present. The legend of the Blackthorns and the missing brides continues, and the ritual, or, like a keeper of memory, awaits new witnesses. What do you think of this story? Do you believe the mysteries of Black Gorge have been fully uncovered? Or do you suspect that similar anomalies and Blackthorn rituals could have existed in other remote corners of the country in the 19th to 20th centuries? The facts suggest that the influence of the Black Ore and the psychological network created by this family could have been part of a much larger system, which we may never fully understand. Share your thoughts below and discuss how people could be protected from such psychological and mystical influences, and what lessons we can learn from this dark chapter of Harper's Falls history. If you enjoyed this story and want to learn about other mysteries and forgotten mystical events of the past, subscribe to our channel, click the bell, and share this video with those who appreciate true, yet mystical stories illuminating the darkest corners of our history. See you in the next video, where we'll delve even deeper into mysterious events that continue to haunt researchers and locals alike.